There's a story they teach you in school about the Library of Alexandria, a tragic accident, a fire that wiped out centuries of human knowledge. But what if the real story is far more disturbing? What if the destruction wasn't an accident at all, but a deliberate act to bury something specific? By the end of this video, you'll see the burning of the Library of Alexandria in a way you never have before. And once you understand who benefited from its destruction, you can't unsee it. Let's start with what we know. The Library of Alexandria wasn't just a building full of scrolls. It was the ancient world's internet. At its peak, it held an estimated 400,000 to 700,000 scrolls, works on mathematics, astronomy, medicine, philosophy, engineering. Knowledge gathered from every corner of the known world. Ships arriving at the port of Alexandria were searched, not for weapons, but for books. Any text found was copied. Sometimes the originals were kept, and the copies were returned to the owners instead. Think about that for a second. This was a civilization that valued knowledge so deeply they essentially stole books from travelers. The library wasn't just a collection. It was a statement. Whoever controlled that knowledge controlled the future, and that's exactly why it became a target. Now, the popular version of the story blames Julius Caesar. In 48 BC, during his civil war against Pompey, Caesar set fire to ships in Alexandria's harbor. The flames spread to warehouses near the docks, and, supposedly, the library burned. It's a clean narrative. A Roman general, a military blunder, an unfortunate accident. Case closed. Except it doesn't hold up. Contemporary accounts suggest the fire damaged a warehouse storing scrolls meant for export, not the main library itself. The geographer Strabo visited Alexandria after Caesar's time and made no mention of the library being destroyed. Scholars continued working there for centuries afterward. So if Caesar didn't destroy it, what actually happened? Here's where it gets interesting. The library didn't die in a single dramatic fire. It was slowly strangled over several hundred years. And each time it lost ground, the same pattern emerged. Someone in power decided that certain knowledge was too dangerous to exist. The real decline began in earnest around 270 AD, when Emperor Aurelian ravaged parts of Alexandria during a campaign to reclaim Egypt. The district housing the main library, the Bruchion, was severely damaged. But even then, a daughter library survived at the Temple of Serapis, the Serapeum. Thousands of scrolls remained intact. Now, this is where the story takes its darkest turn. And it involves a book, or more precisely, a category of knowledge that powerful people wanted erased from history. By the late 4th century, Christianity had become the dominant force in the Roman Empire. Emperor Theodosius issued decrees banning pagan practices, and the Serapeum, the last surviving branch of the Great Library, sat inside a pagan temple. In 391 AD, Theophilus, the Patriarch of Alexandria, led a mob to destroy the Serapeum. The temple was demolished. What remained of the scrolls inside was scattered or burned. But here's what most accounts leave out. The works targeted most aggressively weren't random philosophy texts or poetry. They were scientific and cosmological writings that directly contradicted the new religious orthodoxy. Texts by Aristarchus of Samos, who had proposed a heliocentric model of the solar system 1,700 years before Copernicus. Works on human-centered medicine that conflicted with the idea that disease was divine punishment. Mathematical treatises that implied an infinite universe with no need for a creator. If you're finding this fascinating, consider subscribing. We dive into hidden history like this every week. The destruction wasn't mindless. It was strategic. Knowledge that supported the existing power structure survived. Knowledge that threatened it was systematically eliminated. This wasn't a single bonfire. It was a centuries-long editing process, and the editors had an agenda. Consider what was lost. Eratosthenes had calculated the circumference of the Earth with stunning accuracy in the 3rd century BC. Hero of Alexandria had built a working steam engine, the Aeolipile, nearly 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution. There were texts on surgical techniques, mechanical engineering, and astronomical observations that wouldn't be rediscovered for over a millennium. Imagine how different the world might look if those works had survived and spread. The steam engine alone could have accelerated human progress by centuries. But that knowledge didn't fit the narrative that those in power wanted to maintain. And it wasn't just Christians. Earlier, during Ptolemaic rule, political rivals purged scholars and their works from the library during power struggles. The pattern repeated across cultures and centuries. Knowledge is only allowed to exist when it serves the powerful. The moment it becomes inconvenient, it burns. The final blow likely came during or after the Muslim conquest of Egypt in 642 AD, though this account is heavily debated and may itself be propaganda written centuries later to shift blame. The truth is, by that point, there wasn't much left to destroy. The library had been dying for 300 years, killed not by a single fire, but by 1,000 small acts of deliberate suppression. So here's the question that should keep you up at night. The Library of Alexandria held knowledge we can't even imagine. We know about the works that survived through copies and references, but what about the ones that didn't? The texts so thoroughly destroyed that we don't even know they existed? There wasn't one book they didn't want found. There were thousands. And the scariest part isn't that they were lost. It's that the same pattern of destroying inconvenient knowledge hasn't stopped. It's just gotten more sophisticated. The library isn't burning anymore, but that doesn't mean the fire went out.